and have been all my life, and now that I'm old,
Okay,
I can see better without my glasses to read.
today is October 19th, 2015. I am Janine Kickert of the Lafayette Historical Society Oral History Project. My son Patrick will assist with the interview. We have with us Barbara Tilton. I will spell it for her. Barbara
Yeah.
Tilton.
Right.
Is that correct,
Right.
Barbara?
That's correct.
And where were you born?
Berkeley.
All right, tell us about your memories when you were growing up in Berkeley.
Yeah, okay. I grew up in Berkeley and went through Berkeley schools up until the age of 12 when we moved east. Berkeley schools were pretty much well, and Berkeley was a nice college town in those days. It's kind of, war made a mess of it. I went through the Berkeley schools, and I went through the Berkeley fire of 1923.
Oh,
And I had some relatives, my grandparents, my maternal grandparents lived in Berkeley, and my mother's older brother, who was Will Morrish, they knew him in financial circles. He was in the bank.
yeah.
And back in the 20s and 30s, he was pretty well known in banking circles. And he was on the board of Bechtel Company at that time. He was a friend of Bechtel. My middle son now works for Bechtel. Oh, if you want to turn the light on, you can.
Do you have siblings, brothers or sisters? Brothers or sisters?
Oh, yes, there were four of us.
Mm-hmm.
I had an older brother, and then me, I'm the second one, and I had a sister, and then a younger brother. My older brother died a few years ago. My younger brother is in a rest home in Denver. And my sister is 97. No, I'm 97. My sister's 95. She lives in San Bernardino, and she's still driving, actually, just to the store and to the church. She became a Mormon.
Well, that's amazing that
Yeah.
she's still driving.
Yeah.
And you still look pretty good.
Well, she didn't learn to drive till she was 50. Her husband died, and she went out and bought a car because she'd never been able to drive when he didn't approve of her driving. She had never learned to drive. I had learned to drive. My older brother learned to drive, but she didn't learn to drive. She'd married at 20, I think, and she began having babies and so forth and so forth and so on. But she's still going strong, and she has a lot of descendants. Like she has 20-some great-grandchildren.
That's a good many.
Yeah.
How about you, Barbara? Do you have children and grandchildren?
I have 3 sons. The oldest one is gone.
I saw those up there, yes.
Those are a product of Lafayette schools.
Oh.
They all went through the school that Nancy went, except they were in the first building. We arrived here. We moved over the hill from Oakland. Well, I don't know whether to get started on this or to finish my Berkeley thing, but I grew up in Berkeley,
Yes.
and
So they went to, when did you move to Lafayette?
oh, well, that's a whole different story. Yeah.
I was just wondering when the children were
Yeah.
going to school in Lafayette.
Well, the left one is my oldest one. He started school in Oakland at the Lakeview School, which is opposite the Grand Lake Theater. You know where that is?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He started in the fall of '54. We moved over the hill in 1954. And oh boy, here we go. We moved to Ladies Valley Road,
Mhm.
and we were the fourth house up there. It's hidden now because they subdivided the land we had, and later
There weren't as many houses.
built a house
Mhm.
on the subdivided land. So, but right now the house has been very well hidden. But there's a driveway, 1336,
1336.
and we lived there for 10 years. And that's the one that Nancy taught in later, but not when my kids were there.
Mhm.
But my kids all started in, and Ed, my first son, was 5 when he started at Lakeview School
Mhm.
in
Oakland.
Oakland, yes. And then we moved in December, and I guess we just didn't let him go to school yet
Mhm.
because we were trying to find out what the schools were. And we ran around trying. We finally found out that he would go to
Burton?
Burton School, way across town,
Mhm.
and that in the September we would have a new school just down the street, and that was the Spring Hill School.
Spring Hill.
And in fact, that my neighborhood down there by the first part of Release Valley, both sides of the road, there were six first graders in that first school.
Not many students at the time.
Right. Yeah, but there was all kinds of school building going on then, and there was another school back in behind Akalani's.
The W.B. Ellis School.
Yeah.
Yes, there were schools
Do you
popping up
remember
like mushrooms at that time.
Yeah.
A lot of development,
Oh yes.
homes.
We were very, very much development. In my husband was a builder, and he added it was a trade deal with the houses. We lived in a triplex house that he built in Oakland, and this was a pretty big house, but only 2 bedrooms. And we had a little over an acre, and so we waited, and Ed, or Eddie we called him when he was little, rode the bus, school bus, clear over to Burton School, which is now part of the
Community
center.
Yes. That was a...
And he spent more time on the bus than he spent at school. But he didn't know any different, because he'd only had the fall months in that school in Oakland. And that was kindergarten, you know, so that was all there was. So he got started in there, and then in the fall, he and 5 other kids were all at that age that started first grade and were in the same class.
Yeah. I understand from Nancy, when you were a young person, did you belong to the Girl Scouts and went to Washington, D.C.?
Yes, well, that's it. Well, I'll go back to the Berkeley
All
thing.
right, that would be good.
My father was connected with the university in the early days. And we had a little house up on Hill Court, if you know where Hill Court is. It's where you go up Euclid Avenue, and you go up the big steep hill to Cedar Street, and then it's the next place, turn right above Cedar Street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there was nothing. But that was where we lived in 1923 when we had the fire. Now, we lived in the house there, and our back porch was on Leroy Avenue, which is now across the street from the former Hillside School. Now, the Hillside School before the fire was down on Virginia Street, I think on the east, I don't remember. It was on the east side or the west side of Euclid. And you know Euclid Avenue, which starts on the east side of the...
I've heard of Euclid. I know a little bit about the North Berkeley area.
Yeah. Well, that's the North Berkeley area, and that's on the side of... Euclid Avenue starts at the campus.
What do you remember of the fire?
Well, my father had taken me to Oakland because I had ear trouble for it was a school day, and I had been going to kindergarten in there, and Miss Gardner, and she taught us French sometimes, ouvrez la porte, stuff like that.
Good.
But when I'd come down there and we came back up College Avenue, we had a big old car. It was a used car. We had a Buick, I guess, then. But we came up College Avenue from Oakland. We saw the big smoke up in the hills. And I worried Dad a little bit, so he stopped at the university campus at his office and called Mother, who was home with a sick 3-year-old and a baby less than 2.
If I could help you with that.
Less than 2 months.
Yes.
Less than a year old.
Yes.
He was born in December. And I imagine she said, "Get home quick." We got home. We had a hard time talking them into the fact that we lived up there, you know, because all the police were all over the place. And but we got up to this court, and our front door was way up here, but our address was on the Hill Court side. And our back side was on Leroy Avenue. But we had, anyway, we got home, and I looked up the street, and in the second block, I could see a house in 7,500 feet high, in flames. And
really close.
That was kind of scared. Well, everybody was trying to move out.
Yes.
And her mother was stuck home with
Baby.
2 babies, a baby and a 3-year-old, and then I was a 5-year-old, and then my brother was in school, and they took all the school kids to the campus. They walked them. I think they walked them down there. They figured they could. That was only maybe 3-4 blocks, and we finally found him much later. But anyway, they knew where he'd been taken to campus, and we got. And this was about, I think, when we got back, maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that, and we had armloads of stuff, clothes mostly, things to take down to the car. And we had a neighbor girl, and they didn't have a car, so she was helping a neighbor child who lived with us. He lived in our basement apartment, and it was a deal, rent for housework, bit, you know, that kind of a deal. And we got away from there. My mother was throwing, it was a 2-story house, too. It was on a hill. And she was throwing things out the window. And she packed up our good silver. She had, a set of good silver from Gump's. That was one.
Valuable.
Had a Gump's called Carmel pattern.
Yes.
And we later found those things. Well, anyway, everybody was putting the silver, wrapping silver up in sheets and things, putting them in the middle of the street, hoping the fire wouldn't reach them.
Oh.
And afterwards, my father picked out all of my mother's silverware, Carmel pattern, which was a very unusual pattern, in a barrel on Telegraph Avenue after the fire.
Someone else had picked it up.
Yeah. And because it had a B on it, B for Bryant, which was my maiden name. And there it was. It's just amazing that
he found it.
And a few things we had left from the fire. But mostly just, more or less panic when Mother wanted to get 4 kids out of.
Yes. Was your house saved?
No.
It burned down.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
But
sorry.
the funny, or the fortunate thing was that my folks had sold the house. We had a lot farther up in Berkeley, up in the Codonesis area. That
The creek.
park was just down the street from us, and but we had this lot, and we had plans, and one set of plans was saved from the fire, so we didn't have to go through all that again. And that's why they had sold the other house, but we were still living in it. So we didn't lose the that house, actually. It was just an amazing thing.
It is.
But then of course, my mother's friends, she'd gone to Berkeley High School, and she earlier lived in the gold country. But it was just amazing that we had that to save the house, and we could immediately start on the rebuilding, and we had a house. We moved into the basement apartment on New Year's Day, which was quite, from September
To
something.
January. Where did you live immediately after the fire?
Well, we spent the night on the far side of the campus with some friends.
Friends.
And I don't know how it happened, but, everybody was trying to help.
Yes.
And those people were safe. Then we lived with some friends, where Los Angeles Avenue is. It comes off of Marin Circle. We were in one of those, you go up Los Angeles Avenue, and if you come uphill, the left side of the street are way up high, steps and steps. All the houses there for about a block or two were way up high. Well, we lived in one of those on the third floor. And Herbal and I, my brother, we walked to school because we went, and the school started, the Hillside School left, so we went to University Elementary, which is now a Lucky Store, or I think it's some kind of grocery store, on Shattuck Avenue, in that, it's up near where that, what's her name, the famous thing has the restaurant in that area. Alice.
Is it near like Solano?
No, it's not that far out.
Not that far up.
No, it's Rose.
Oh, on Rose.
Rose and Solano. And Vine, between there, kind of between Rose and Vine on Shattuck Avenue.
So you joined the Girl Scouts? They had Girl Scouts in your time?
Oh, no, that was very different. The Girl Scouts were, that was in Washington.
All right.
So, that we got through when I was 12, and we moved into the new house, and we lived there, and when I was 12, and my father was in the, I have to back up a little bit. My father was in the National Park Service after this, but it also was part-time. We went to Yosemite every single year that I was living except the first.
Beautiful place.
And we lived there all summer, 3 months.
Yes.
And we'd
Nice.
leave school early, a few days early, and come back a few days late because the summer didn't include the whole, the summer school didn't include the whole 3 months. I mean, it's summer vacation.
What did you find to do in Yosemite
Oh,
as young children?
yeah, we were just children. We scrambled around barefoot. We had a tent that we lived in, and because he was a government employee in the summer, and he was a ranger naturalist. In those days, they called him a nature guide. Nature guide, yeah. And,
You must have had a lot of fun then.
yeah, well,
Always
that
on
was
vacation.
that was all in the 20s, and at that time we used to. The first few years, it took us a day and a half to get to Yosemite because of the you get to Merced and then start climbing into Yosemite. We had a choice of Wawona Road and the big old flat road, and
Cars didn't have a lot of power then.
no, of course we had a Buick for a while, and then my dad used to buy a Cadillac, used Cadillac, because he knew somebody that used all the good stuff out of it, and then we had because it was a 7-passenger.
Mm-hmm.
Well, children in Yosemite did the same thing that they would any other place. They played house, they played whatever with balls and
Yeah, well, we played games all over
games.
over the. We had a government camp, Camp 19, which is now non-existent because they tore it down. But in the days of the early 20s there, from 1920 to 1930, we could, oh boy, no, I'm not trying to thought. Anyway, we ran around barefoot and played around. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any jobs or anything like that except helping around the house, mm-hmm. Which was a big tent. We had a big tent that had a floor in it, and 2 double beds and a crib, mm-hmm. packing case crib, and so that was the fun part. We just loved Yosemite. We go hiking. And
fishing.
Just and my dad worked, and he did all the he knew.
I think we put that down.
He had a PhD in zoology. So he knew, a lot of and he knew a lot of botany, and he knew a lot of stuff. So that he started he and another man started the nature guide, so to speak, and later they are now naturalists. Ranger naturalists is what they call them. And a lot of them are women now. But that was great stuff. And we took backcountry trips every once in a while. We didn't backpack, but we had, we'd take a mule or a horse or something.
Mm-hmm.
My dad grew up with horses. You know, he knew how to, you know, I didn't know anything about them. But I took the famous story that Nancy likes to tell is that in 1919, when I was 15 months old, my folks took not a backpacking trip, but a pack trip with a horse or two to carry everything. And my mother was a good scout on all this stuff, and in fact, my parents went camping on their honeymoon.
They were a good team. They were
not before I was born.
No, but they were a good team because
Yeah.
they had the same interests.
Yeah.
And she was very brave to take you
yeah,
along.
Oh gosh, yeah, her friends were all thought she was killing me off. Well, there was also my little brother my big brother who was 3.
Handful.
But I can't find where they are now, but we have pictures of me and my mother made a sling, sewed a sling out of canvas, something, you know, like now you can go out and buy. And my great-grandson has lugged around in one of those all these, and he's only 1.5 now. But he was, they took me and my brother at 3 on a 2-week trip from Tahoe to Yosemite, down the backbone of the mountain.
A long way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember it, but they do have pictures to prove it.
Don't remember that.
Yeah. Well, I could kind of startle people with something like that. I was just barely walking. And I probably wasn't walking in all the rough ground because they put a box. You know what a pack saddle is?
Mm-hmm.
Pack saddle has two boxes, one on each side, and they put a little box or something in for a seat, and I sat on that, and my brother sometimes, when he got tired, he was only 3, when he got tired, they plunked him up on top of the pack thing, with, next to me. And I guess he knew how to hang on because that was just all the packing and stuff. Well, anyway, that's when we were in Yosemite, and we were there for 12 summers, I think. My sister was born there, and she's the one that's still driving. I kind of wonder about her, but because she didn't learn to drive till she was 50 years old. She bought a car. She bought a big Chevrolet, one of those great big long Chevrolets, Impala. She bought an Impala. And back in 1978, and she had it until a year or so ago, and somebody stole it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Where does she live?
San Bernardino.
Happens every place, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, she was sick. Because she'd driven that for years and years and years. People, always wanted to buy it off of her. My son, my oldest son, who was a mechanic, he loved that Chevrolet. He liked Chevrolets.
He was just as hurt as she was then when it disappeared. It's a shame. Did you work, Barbara?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, I didn't do much.
Are you getting tired?
No, just I just want to move around.
All right.
I'm trying to raise my voice so I can.
You don't need to. It catches clear across an auditorium.
Okay.
Did you know that, Patrick? Yes.
Oh, good.
You don't need to worry about that. So, what work did you do?
Well, when we moved east, and my dad was in the office of the Interior Department and he was an assistant director in charge of all the research and education around in the parks. But he didn't like the politics much. And he was in the office, but he wasn't the head shot. The big shot had to go over to Congress and over on the hill, so to speak. But we got along pretty well, and he once got offered to be superintendent of Yosemite, but three of us were in high school, and you know how high schoolers don't like to move.
Mm-hmm. You have your close friends.
Yeah, and but he put it up to us. He sat us down and said, "Would you like to go back to Yosemite?" And we perked up, and then we think we had to go on a bus clear to Mariposa on the bus every day and back.
Oh.
In high school. And that's where three of us were in high school. Three of us went. And we turned it down. I don't know, it's pretty tough on Dad, but and later when we came west again, they gave him Grand Canyon, and he was superintendent of Grand Canyon for 15 years. And so he did get back out into the fields which he loved, yeah. But now what was it?
I was wondering if you
did I work? Did I work? Well,
yes. Did
no,
you have a job?
I never had the ambition. I didn't want to teach. I always said I didn't want to teach. And I started college in American University in Washington. And I had 2 years there, 2.5 years, before we moved west again. But I never knew what to major in. I was just, I was expected to go to college. And I thought, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And
but you took care of your family, your children.
Oh yeah, but
yes.
this was before when I was in college, and So then later when we moved west, when we moved to Grand Canyon, I was in the middle of college and my sister was a freshman. And my brother had graduated from American University, which was a very small, it had a big shot political something downtown, but what do you call it? Anyway, the
student body wasn't large, or
no, it was only 400 students, and but there was just a campus down Massachusetts Avenue, and that was easy for us to get to. And my dad bought a used car for us to go to when I got into college, and then there was one year when my brother and I were both in the same place, and he bought us a clunky old car, and we picked up some others around the neighborhood, you know.
He got you there.
Yeah, and he got it there and back because it was not very convenient. The public transportation to that particular place, but I had taken public transportation to high school, and that was Western High School. And I went 7 miles down and back on the streetcar. 3 years of that, because we did have junior highs in those days.
Did you say?
We had junior highs. I had started one down in Berkeley, and then I hit two. I had one when we lived temporarily in a place until we found a permanent home and bought a house. Then we were moved to Chevy Chase, and then they were building schools back there.
Maryland?
They were building schools.
In Maryland? Chevy Chase in Maryland?
Well, no, Chevy Chase had both Maryland and, that was a dividing line.
But the District of Columbia in Maryland?
Yeah.
You're talking about back east?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we lived almost to the extreme there, where it was almost always, we almost got to Maryland.
Almost to Maryland,
Yeah,
but it was
Maryland.
within the District of Columbia.
Yeah, but we were we lived in a Rittenhouse Street now, which is a funny name.
Bethesda? Do you know Bethesda, Maryland?
Yeah, that was just beyond us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to ask a couple of questions about Lafayette. We know.
Oh, well, I finished the test about my job.
Oh, yes.
Oh, all right.
I chose sociology as a major because it was interesting to me, and so forth and so on.
Yes.
And I never meant to. I never was aiming for any kind of that sort of a job to have. So I don't know. I didn't do much of anything. I worked on the campus in Berkeley for a couple of years, and in the agricultural economics department. And I took a business course when I got out of college. And then later, it was wartime, and my cousin my cousin is a best friend and his wife. I always heard about Ed Tilton. She would talk about Ed Tilton all the time. And finally, he was in San Francisco, and he had a wholesale shop down on 9th Street, and he needed help. And he kept asking me if I wanted to come to work for him, and I finally did. And then I married his brother.
Mm.
So so I kind of got waylaid over onto the thing, and I was taking dictation, and I wasn't very good at it. But that was the job I had on the campus, was doing things like mimeograph.
Mm-hmm.
Remember mimeograph?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't. You're not old enough. Yeah.
Pretty.
You did these big, you type these big things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They were more or less legal size, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so you typed that stuff, and I typed pretty well. Not too accurately, maybe, but anyway, that was what I did, and I went to work for him over in San Francisco on 9th Street, and I was there when the United Nations, and I was just a few steps across, and I couldn't get in there or anything. But I was right in that neighborhood when they established the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So it was interesting.
How did you come from being back east in Washington back to California?
My dad was given the title of Superintendent of Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
So we sold the house and came out. But he loved being in the field again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He didn't like politics. He didn't like Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So we said yes this time, because we were all out of school.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that wasn't out of high school was my youngest brother, and he had I think 1 year a year and a half to go when we moved.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Flagstaff and stayed in the dorm at that time was Arizona State Teachers College in Flagstaff. Now it's Northern California, or Northern Arizona University.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a bit different,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more reputation and so forth and so on. But both my younger siblings went there,
Mm-hmm.
and he finished. My youngest wife finished 1 year in at Grand Canyon. He took a what do you call it? When you do it by mail.
A mail?
Yeah, school by mail.
Oh, correspondence course.
Correspondence course, yeah. And he took all that. He finished the year that we moved in February.
Mm-hmm.
He finished the year with that, and then he went back to school and finished the last year in of high school in Flagstaff. That was 90 miles from Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to stay in the thing, but he had his sister there. She was in the college and he was in the high school.
Mm-hmm.
But he was living in the dorm of the college. Oh, it was crazy.
Well, you people were very
Yeah, but
involved
then he
the
got in the
universe.
war and
Yes,
and,
but did you ever watch the movies at all? Was that an interest of yours, Barbara?
I like movies, but until I got to the point where I couldn't hear them. You get in one of those big movie theaters and it was so loud
Yes.
that I couldn't, I just couldn't understand.
Did you go to the movies in Lafayette when you were living in Lafayette?
Oh yeah, I lived right behind the theater.
The Park Theater.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good.
As I came and I lived in I can't say it. I keep forgetting things.
Well, you were born in 1914?
No,
1918.
1918.
18, yeah.
Well, I think you can forget a couple of things and be excused.
Yeah, well, it's, but I lived in the Chateau Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know where that is?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
still
right
there.
downtown. Oh, I lived there 20 years.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh.
until my year of whatever last year in August, I had a fall, and I had already moved downstairs after living 3 years upstairs in the third. But they did have an elevator, and but I began to worry about getting downstairs if there was a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other son came out from Houston, and we discussed it, and they wanted me to move downstairs. So I moved downstairs, and I was down there 2 months.
Mm.
And I liked it well enough. But I fell that night. I was falling quite a bit. You get that bed.
Balance isn't as good.
Yeah, well, I was...
Your sight?
my balance had been bad for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up real dizzy one morning, and I sat up in bed and immediately clonked back out. And I went and had a lot of tests and from an ear man.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't, it just said it would never go away.
Mm-hmm.
It would, might not.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't anything they could do about it.
Dizzy,
Really.
yeah, there was not much you can do.
Well, do you feel that Lafayette has changed a great deal from the time you first moved there?
Oh, yes, I loved Lafayette.
Well, tell us about your first impressions of Lafayette when you moved here.
Oh, well, I saw that little church in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
It said Lafayette Community Church. And it said Methodist or something. Anyway, that's what I was, a Methodist all my life. And so I and we moved over the hill in December 1954. And if you remember, if you were here, 1955 at Christmas time was a very wet session.
Mm-hmm.
flooding.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd seen that thing, and I thought, well, I'll get my kids. And I lived close to a church in Oakland where I could just walk the kids to Sunday school, and they'd had a little bit of experience with Sunday school. So I thought I took them the first time. And I was driving from Release Valley to downtown Lafayette, and I stopped, and there were puddles all over the place around the church, and there was this little man, a little kind of short man, Mr. Inman Kane. Do you remember? You ever heard of him?
No.
But he was kind of on the lookout to help people. He said, "Are you looking for the Sunday school?" And I had two little boys then, 3 and 5, and I said yes. And so he led me across these. They had boards across puddles, all around in the between stuff, and the educational building was the first time they had used it on the first Sunday in January, 1955. Everything was puddly and muddy. And so I was very interested in the community church. I'd been involved in church a lot of the time in my in the youth and things like that. And the youth group when I was way back when, that was back in Washington. And
I have a question here that they may be interested in knowing what you did when someone was ill or injured. Was there a doctor's office in Lafayette, or did you have to take them to Berkeley, to a hospital, or how did you manage that when you were in Lafayette?
well, I had a third baby when we moved out here, and I moved in with my baby doctors that I had before into Oakland.
Oh, I see. Yes.
But because there wasn't any hospital, but the Concord.
They hadn't built Kaiser or anything like
No,
that.
but I was in on the original. My next door neighbor had a breakfast over at her house, raising money for a new hospital. And I'm now a patient there, so I've been there 2 or 3 times.
There's 2 big hospitals now in Walnut Creek, because you have Kaiser and you have John Muir.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. I know, and I just never. I know a lot of people that bought the Kaiser, but I somehow didn't get into that with the. Well, I just didn't get into the. There were times I could have started with Kaiser.
Did you know most of your neighbors when you were living in the Release Valley?
Yeah, we lived there 10 years.
Yes. Oh, 10 years. All right.
Yeah, and I've lived in a lot of places. In then we rented for a while, and then I divorced my husband. He was an alcoholic.
It's hard.
But I lived on 1336 Release Valley. I lived in 1806 Release Valley when Carl was in high school, because that was the one thing. And in between, I lived over on the corner of St. Mary's and it's just down. It was opposite Stanley Schoolyard.
Ocampo or Solana?
No, in the schoolyard and
Over by Burton.
no.
Well, are we by Stanley School or
Stanley School.
Yes.
Stanley School. We lived on the St. Mary's side, and we looked right on the.
But you were right on the road there, St. Mary's Road.
We were on the corner. I rented the house.
Well, you were a busy person.
Well, it was good. We lived there for pretty good, but that was without my husband, and that was 1 year. And but I was stuck with my church. And I've belonged there now for like 60 years.
That's how you knew Nancy, Flood, and Sandy? They belong to that church, and they're very close.
You know, and they're very close to me, too.
Wonderful.
We have...
they're darling, aren't they?
Yeah. As I met Sandy's mother. Did you ever meet her?
No.
She was a doll. She was just the nicest thing.
Well.
And everybody loved her. She was just...
well, Sandy's a really sweet person, you know?
Nancy's mother was good too, but she just wasn't so appealing.
Oh.
Yeah. And I knew her and her stepfather, Bailey. You know, her father died rather young, and her mother. Well, they are long-time Lafayette residents, right downtown someplace.
Yeah. Many generations, actually. The Floods have been there for 4 or 5 generations.
Yeah, well, there was, they were down there, Happy Valley somewhere. Upper Happy Valley, I think, like where.
Later on, I think she lived right near Patar's restaurant. Do you remember where that was?
Yeah.
The newer Patars, not the old Patars.
Yeah, the newer one, right downtown, right?
Yeah, but they were right down in the center of town when Nancy was little.
Yes, yeah.
And
well, we've interviewed Nancy also. I have an interview with her. Yeah, so we know quite a bit about her, and she's a real sweetheart.
Yeah, she has a lovely voice.
Can you
singing voice?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
She has a lovely singing voice. Very strong.
She does sing in the history room too.
She can beat anybody out.
Yeah, what was that? Would you change anything about Lafayette, or are you quite happy with it right now?
I think Lafayette's pretty good. I've lived a lot of places in Lafayette. I lived there, and then I moved to and I lived in Chateau Lafayette for 20 years.
Yes,
and
that's where you moved down.
And we had that bus and everything, and the gal that drove the bus was a great friend of everybody.
They
Big, tall.
Take good care of you people there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her name was Paula Carl.
Mm-hmm.
But since you're not driving, you probably aren't aware that there's not many parking spaces any longer. Lafayette has grown so much in the population with apartments.
Well, when I moved in, I waited about a year for space. We had, I think, 26 spaces on our property, and but at that time, there weren't very many people moving in. Most of the people that moved in had given up their cars. Those that moved in originally
Mm-hmm.
in Lafayette, the ones that came out of Lafayette.
Did they take the bus or?
Yeah, well, we didn't have the bus for the first few years.
You're talking about the chateau.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chateau.
We didn't have
Okay.
we didn't have the bus for the first few years, but then it came, and well, it's old. I don't know. We've had it a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 20 years that she's lived there, I'm sure there are a lot of changes that
Yeah,
you'd certainly be aware of.
yeah. Well, she's
Where's here it is.
it's very
Can you?
Well,
we're
very
just
good,
thinking-
and we
What
had.
time is it now?
You know, I went through the
Oh.
thing with Thomas.
Mhm.
Tommy Thomas. Thomas as the director, and Irene Thomas. You've heard of Irene Thomas?
I don't know them.
No?
No.
Well, she was a big shot in Lafayette for a while. In fact, she now runs the Arinda Senior Project.
I see.
And her husband ran the one we have, Lafayette. And Irene used to be in the schools. She used to run the school meal system, I think.
Mm-hmm. Like Meals on Wheels sort of thing.
No, in the
No,
school.
the
in the schools.
Cafeteria.
Actual schools.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's, but they both died a couple years apart, and quite some time ago. Yeah, and then we had the Barbara Steele, who is still, I think, still running it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any stories about your experiences in Lafayette that you'd like to share?
Oh boy. Well, I have a T-shirt someplace that says "Human Walk" or "Human Race." Human race, something about the human race. I used to do that, walk around the reservoir before I got so blasted by my knees that I can't walk anymore. My knees are wasted.
It's a 5-mile walk around, is it?
2.5. No, about
Two
a
and
little
a
over
3
2
miles. Yeah, they say it's roughly 3 miles.
If you're on the lake shore, not the rim up in the hills, that's a lot longer.
How often did you walk? Once a week?
Oh no, that was. We had one time. It would be once a year when you get a T-shirt, and that was all kinds of things were different then. But there were a lot of different things like that when you walk around the reservoir, and we even used to have church over there. One day a year.
Well, the
We had
church
church
is,
over there. Now we have out at the other the big. In August we have church outside, down at that one beyond the park beyond the York, beyond the community center.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You know, the one
Way down St. Mary's Road.
Yeah, yeah. And they had one this year. They've had us about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. And that's good, but that's the church. And I've enjoyed the Lafayette art show thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to walk around there until this last time I walked around. I got pretty tired.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Art and Wine Festival? Yeah. Yes. We just had it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, well,
Almost a month.
Almost a month.
It's September, I think. September.
Always hot.
Yes, boy. But I was out of commission almost all last year. On August 7th, I fell and broke my neck.
No.
And I didn't even know. I fell at home at night, and nobody there. I managed to get myself into bed. I was getting undressed at the time, and I just keeled over. Boom. And I hit right here. And I was beginning to get a lady who appeared at church to work for me a little bit. And I'd have her for, say, 3 hours a day and maybe 3 days a week or something like that. But I went to bed, and I got up the next morning, and I was very careful about moving around because I had felt something kind of go gunk when I hit, and I went 3 days. I did 1 day, and then the next day, Fran came. That was the worker, and she babied me when I told her about it, and then it was 2 whole days. That happened Monday night, and Tuesday I went along, and then Wednesday Fran came, and she went away and warned me to take it easy, and I said I will, and I went till Thursday morning, and I began to think at night, just something. I called my son Carl. I said, "Will you get me to emergency and over at John Muir?" He says, "I'll be right over." I told him what he that had fallen 3 days before.
Oh, my goodness.
And
you suffered that time.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I was just not that unhappy, but it had been a fall again, and you just don't know that over falls. They always warn you not to fall when you're this age, And he took me to.
But you're feeling better now.
Oh yeah. I had to wear a collar for 3 months, 3.5 months.
Barbara, if someone came by to take a picture of you from the Lafayette Historical Society, would you be willing to have a picture, or do you have an old one that they can take and make a copy
Well,
of?
I have a couple of recent ones, one that's
Would
about...
you let us take them and we'll make a copy of it, Xerox,
I
and
can't think where they are.
and bring it back to you? Would it be in this room?
That's what I don't remember.
Well, if she asked one of the attendants here,
I have some with my hair like this, which was in my church bulletin. See if
I tell you what, I'll ask Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
We'll ask Nancy or
Yeah.
Sandy to come and talk to you about the picture, and they'll make a copy, and then
I just can't remember whether I have a.
from.
I'm sure I do.
Well, that's all right. They'll
Somewhere.
take care. They come to see you often, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they'll do that then.
Oh,
They know you well than Patrick
Oh,
and
yeah.
I. Well,
Yeah.
Patrick, I don't want to tire her so much.
Mm-hmm.
You
I was just
know,
saying
I
if
don't
there
wanna
was
tire you.
anything else you'd like to add, or we can come back some other time that
well,
if you
I
have-
was just trying to think whether if I told you everything I wanted to
Tell us.
about the Berkeley fire. That was what was interesting.
Well, I tell you what, you think about it, and then you tell Nancy you want us to come back again, and we can record further,
Okay.
if you like that. So, Patrick, do you have a pen there, or shall I get a pen?
well,
Just-
I'll just we'll just conclude this right now then. Or
All right, yes.
all right.
And we certainly want to thank you,
Well, someplace I
Barbara.
have one of those
Barbara.
It's been a
near
great
the bottom of
a great
one.
pleasure.
And I'll show you the picture that has